Would you like to play a nice game of Deckdle? Hey, Matt.
Hey, Mike.
Would you like to do a podcast?
Yes. Yes, I would.
Let's do that. Welcome, everyone, to Hacking the Grepson. Today, we're going to be talking about me, because I made a thing. And
Yay, you.
And I'm making Matt talk about it. It is a new web game, a new daily web game that I made, I don't know, a couple months ago, based on the current index number, called Deckdle.
Is that how long ago it was? It feels way more recent than that.
I mean, 2 months is not that long, but also is long. It's weird, you know?
That's fair. Also, I totally stepped on you saying the name of it. It's called Deckdle.
It is called Deckdle, as in a deck of cards and ripping off Wordle. Yes. It is another in that line of daily games where you get a setup that is unique to that day, and everybody who plays it that day gets that setup. And in this case, since I've only built one type, there's no selection. Well, sorry, let me back up. This is a card game. Deckdle, as in a deck of cards, normal 52 card deck of cards, and you are playing solitaire, and you are specifically playing, because I haven't written any other versions, golf, which is a super duper simple version of solitaire or patience type card games, which are generally solo one-player games. And yeah, everybody gets the same setup every day, and you try to do your best at it. And that's it. And then you wait until the next day, just like Wordle and all of its things. So, Matt, you played Deckdle. As someone who did not write it, but has used it, what do you think of it as a web app game thing?
It's terrible. No.
Yes.
I like it, actually. It's one of the ones I look forward to every day, honestly.
That's awesome.
I'm a big solitaire fan. I've played a lot of solitaire in my day. And one of my favorites is Spider Solitaire. Another one is Tri-Peaks. And both of those follow very similar rule sets to golf. With you can go up or down by a rank. Actually, I think Spider Solitaire doesn't do that. Tri-Peaks does, which is the one I like a lot. And so it scratches an itch I already have for playing that kind of game. And then I enjoy, just like we've talked about for other daily web games, it's got all the nice little it's one thing, it's one thing a day. I can do more if I want because you got the free play mode. It's fun because it's a game I already like. And it's got the little social aspect where we all talk about how we did. Mm-hmm. Getting to add multiple different types of bird emojis to our Slack has been fun.
That's the best. That's my favorite part.
Who knew some of those things? Not me, that's for sure. Ultimately, it's really fun. You do have the one bug, which we should talk about at some point on here. But yes. It's run remarkably well. It's had very few problems.
That's
which
good.
Is honestly for a web app that's being used by 4 people is rare, because I imagine that most people would write it and then not test enough. So you clearly did a good job on that.
Yeah, you bring up a good point about testing, which is something that that's definitely a deficit of mine when it comes to being a programmer. I know we've talked about testing. I don't know if we had a whole episode about it, but we've definitely mentioned it many times about testing your app. Which means that not only do you write the app, but you also write tests that test all of the parts of your app, so that basically you can just hit a button and it does all the things that you expect your app to do. And for a web app, that largely means loading the right pages, links go to the right places, user data is correct, logging in, logging out, that kind of acceptance testing, they call it. Sometimes they call it integration testing. When it's not a web app and it's all in the code and it's functions and modules and classes themselves, then it's unit testing. But in general, I've never really done that kind of thing, because I've always started apps, at least for most of my career, with either a framework that didn't do tests out of the box, or it was as in Deckdle's case, a custom app. So obviously it didn't come with like, a create new app function and then a whole bunch of files appear and then I edit them like if you were using React or Ruby on Rails or something like that, or basically any programming framework. But my new job has me learning Ember, as I've mentioned, and it is one of those frameworks where when you do new app, it gives you a bunch of tests. So it's sort of like, oh, this is what a test suite looks like. These are the kinds of things you should at least be thinking about and expanding on. And so I do have it set up so that when I make a commit to Deckdle, it does linting of all my files. Never done that before. And then before it allows a push into the actual master or main repo, it runs the test suite. And so if the tests don't run or don't all pass, then it doesn't let you push into the main repo. Even though I'm the only one working on it, it's kind of like a fail-safe check for me.
No, I mean, I think that's good. I always have, those kind of checks in place. I'm also terrible about testing. Testing is just one of those things that it's easy to put off. And I tend to do a lot of manual testing, which is faster in the moment and slower over time. I'm burning my short-term resources, basically. Mm-hmm. But, I think it's a good idea, even if you are on your own repo in isolation, to test and to verify that things build before you merge into main. Keeping a clean Git repo is useful.
Yeah.
Especially because, if you get to the point where like it's running stably, you don't have to do anything for a while and you come back in 6 months, you're like, what did I do?
Yes. And the bug that you hinted at is something that I did not have a test for. And so that's probably why it's a bug and why I didn't catch it earlier. But to elucidate everyone, basically there's an issue with, since this is a daily web app, it's supposed to give you one setup per 24 hours, essentially, from 12 midnight to 11:59 p.m. And then when it rolls over to 12, if you load the page, it should grab a new setup. But as long as you're within that range, you can hit refresh as much as you want, and it should save your progress, whether you've worked on it or you're in the middle of it or you finished it, and know that it's still the same 24-hour period and not give you a new setup, like a new, in card games, the vernacular is like the tableau, like basically how the cards are arranged that you're taking from to try to beat the level. And of course, when you're running this locally, you've got your own computer, and this is a time issue, and this is a date and a time issue and a desync between a couple different parts of the code, and one thinking that it's one time zone. You can tell I did a little work on this before the podcast because I wanted to have some idea of what actually might be wrong, and I do know now that the way that I calculate the index, which is essentially like how many numbers since the first one it is, like today's number 57, and the actual date, I'm using two different methods. One is using a date time object.
Very common.
And the other one is just using the date function. This is all in PHP. Mm-hmm. And the date function thinks it's UTC. The date time thinks it's Pacific.
Yeah.
And so there's your 7 hours of difference, and why if you wait till 5 o'clock to do Deckdle, I know because you found this, if you wait too long to do it, it rolls over to the next day because that one function thinks it's midnight in England. Yeah. But
yeah, we kept saying 7 o'clock because it seemed like that's when we would happen to hop on. But like, I can see it right now that I went on to today's and it's tomorrow's, but it still says it's today's.
Yep.
Which is a funny bug. Yeah.
Funny.
Time zones are
bugs.
Time zones are a real pain. They're not an easy thing to keep straight. I don't know why they make it so complicated in so many programming languages. I basically never want it to adjust for my local time zone, and I always want to use UTC unless I explicitly tell it to, right? Like in displaying, that is when I want it. But if I'm just getting like a timestamp, which is what I would want, and then, second since epoch, and then going from there, like I never want that skewed by a time zone. I want it UTC time.
Yeah.
And I cannot tell you how many times in my career this has bitten me.
Yeah, and the thing is with a web app, you often have a front end language and a back end language, and they have their own methods and functions to handle time. And so this is really a two-pronged issue where like the front end that all the people are interacting with, which is JavaScript, they're clicking or they're loading a page, which is loading JavaScript, which is saying, okay, you're on daily mode. I need to find out what the daily setup is for right now, what JavaScript thinks running on the server, the day and time is right now. And then that does a call to a PHP backend script, which is also doing a check to see what time it is. And those are not the same functions. They're not even the same languages. And so, yeah, there's a whole bunch of layers. And you could do all this with like different libraries and methods to get it. Like even just in JavaScript, like I know there's been many libraries that have basically been written to try to handle and smooth over all this. Because my bug is like just a time zone issue, but it's the list is limitless with dates and adding and subtracting them and leap years and
exactly. And then leap years have a bunch of weird rules and it's nuts. Yeah. We used to ask that as an interview question at an old job of mine of like write a function that would do time zones or not time zones leap years correctly, right? Mm-hmm. Was basically that was the crux, and the whole point was trying to get them to ask questions because most people don't know. I don't know the rules for all. It's like, okay, it's every 4 years, except every 100 years, except for every 400 years, except for every or whatever it is.
Yeah,
like there's some bizarreness to it, and that can be complicated to write for, especially for like a more junior engineer.
Yeah,
but I blame the people who create the compilers, quite frankly, or the programming languages and interpreters. Like, there's no reason for it to be as complicated as it is. Mm-hmm. The model should be one thing, and it should be consistent. And if I talk about time, that's what I'm seeing. And the only time it should be different is in a view, when I am showing it to a user. That's the only time that it would need to be in that like human readable format. The rest of the time, I just want something consistent.
Yeah, you touched on a good point where there's just the like system or internal representation of the time, which could be like, the Unix seconds since the Unix epoch, or it could be a literal like year hyphen month, or year hyphen month hyphen day. And then there's what actually gets shown to the user, which could be changed at the time, could be based on their time, whether it's today for them or yesterday for them. And it's a whole thing. Anyway, that's something that now that I have done some research, I get why it's doing that, but it's still, time issues are a thing.
Wibbly wobbly, timey wimey.
Very. The other thing I wanted to mention about Deckdle is mainly that I wrote it because I really like Wordle, obviously, and we all do a lot of daily games, and so ever since I wrote Bogdle, which is basically like a Boggle plus Wordle thing. And then I did Nebudle, which is basically like Hurdle, but just for my music because I needed a database of music and I didn't want to query the Spotify API. But then I was like, okay, I want to make another one. Words are so saturated. There's so many daily word games. Like Wordle it's awesome because it's sort of like, the Ramones for punk bands. Like it's like a band that spawned a million other bands. Wordle is an app that spawned a million other apps, but it's covered. So I'm like, all right, what hasn't been covered? And somehow a daily word game or a daily card game like this, I couldn't find one. So I was kind of surprised that I was even able to make this and be somewhat unique. And
there are a couple out there, but they're not like. There's different types of card games. Like Set is a game that I was actually going to make a daily, and it turns out that already exists by the people who make Set.
Oh, well, there you go.
I'm like, oh, that's great. And that actually existed before Wordle, to my knowledge, because I used to do that like early days in the pandemic. That was one of my wake my brain up activities, which is what I use all these daily things for.
Yeah,
it's like, okay, come on, brain, start functioning. I have to be productive today.
Yeah, I had, maybe not surprisingly to you now, but in general, it was surprising that I had never really done any kind of programming with cards. I remember you saying that a deck of cards is one of the things that you use as like your test of a new programming language. I I mean, maybe like in an advent of code, a puzzle might have been one, but I'd never just taken that on as like a personal project. So this is the first time I've dealt with modeling cards and a deck of cards and a tableau of cards. And currently, because it's custom, it's kind of a hodgepodge of pseudo classes and not classes, which, you know, I'm getting there. One of the other things I wanted to mention besides testing that Deckdle has brought is trying to make my code more modular and working in Ember, which is already a framework that puts everything into components. They call them components. But basically just taking the code, at least in JavaScript, and putting it into a class just like OOP, and like having like a card be an object, and that has properties and it has methods, and you use those as opposed to writing these really, bespoke on the fly kind of functions that are all like in global state, which obviously it's a bad idea. And if once you scale beyond a toy project gets insane. And so I've been trying to do that.
There are people that will disagree with you on that.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Object-oriented programming, I said there are people that will disagree with you on that.
Okay.
Object-oriented programming is definitely not the thing that everybody believes is the right choice for their programming.
How else would you approach modeling a deck of cards? Like, honestly.
Honestly, I don't know. To me, when
either.
you're modeling something, object-oriented programming is the obvious way to go. Because you just literally map it to... It's like, here's my object, here's its properties, and here's the things you can do on it. The end.
Yeah.
Right? And it fits the way I think. It makes my code make more sense. It gives me obvious places to create components or whatever, right? Like to split up my code, modularize it. I like it, but it's definitely not... It is not as in favor as I really thought it would be when I graduated college. I thought, all right, this is going to go everywhere. Because it was still new-ish back then.
I mean,
hadn't really taken off.
I mean, I feel like, once again, I'm always speaking from the perspective of a web dev. That's what I've done most of my life. And even though I started with Java in college, so I started with OOP, but then going into web development and touching JavaScript for the first time largely blew that out of the way and, paved the way for my spaghetti code tendencies. And obviously JavaScript, especially with TypeScript, is trying to kind of like move it back towards what Java is in terms of OOP. Yeah. And it there's lots of Band-Aids and layers on top of vanilla JavaScript to get there, but it's still not an object-oriented programming language, regardless of all of that.
But TypeScript makes it work that way in a way that, or close enough, where I find TypeScript infinitely preferable to just like vanilla JavaScript, or honestly any of the frameworks I used on like jQuery or any of those that are on top of it. I don't like I don't like the way those look even. So I'm curious, Mike.
Yes.
I have not delved into the architecture of your game.
Okay.
So I am actually surprised to hear that you have both the server and a client, because I had just assumed you'd written this all as like a client side thing. So I'm curious, what does what in your app?
I mean, I will say that it's like 99% JavaScript front end code. The one part that is PHP is the part that, and it's possible that I thought I had to do it this way when I first built a daily game, and I just keep doing it, and it's not necessarily required, but I wrote the part that essentially like gets the epoch of the game. So what is the first day of the game? I want that to come from the server. I don't want that to be something that someone would read or produce on the client side, so that when
makes sense.
You go there, it's always hitting the server and finding, okay, what's the single source of truth for this game? Oh, it's August 25th, and then every day after that is, and you up the index number. So that day 57 has been 57 days since the first time this ran. And also it does the hashing of the unique string for the day that you're looking at to get the integer that I use to run is basically the seed for the randomizer, which shuffles the deck. So it's like there's this tool called Chance, which is just a JavaScript library that does seeded randomization. So that way you can always get, even though it's random, pseudo-random, it is seeded by something because the regular vanilla JavaScript does not allow for a seed. I don't know what it uses for its seeding when you say give me a random number between 0 and 1.
Almost certainly it's using the time.
Right.
That tends to be what people... So I'm an old developer. Back in my day, you had to seed your random numbers or you would get the same random results every time, or you'd get the same thing in the order that you called it, right? You'd get every time you could get predictable results. And so seeding became like, all right, go check the time. Or now, there's like dev-u random on most Linux systems. And if you like cat that, you get some pseudo random bytes. But getting randomness in general is not always easy. And that actually makes sense to get something like that from the server in particular, because that's one of those areas that people can easily mess around with and cheat, right? Like I could go get tomorrow's deck if I already have it because of the bug.
I know there's a bug, okay?
Yeah. The other interesting part I find of what you've written is, and something I haven't encountered in my own personal development of things, is because we all, your friends and myself that have all, well, I'm your friend too, because the people who have played your app, you had us testing it out fairly early in development. There's been a couple of situations where you're like, yeah, you got to wipe out your local cache. And I find that really interesting, that's not more of a solved problem. It seems like that should be built into things, like an easy way to like just dump the cache from within the application or something. And it could be smart enough to like do that when you make a change or something.
Yes, and there is. And if I were more fastidious about my coding and this was a higher profile app, I would have built that in. Yes, you can clear your local storage with JavaScript by pushing a button. I actually, when I run it locally, I have a bunch of debug functions that don't show up on the production, and one of those is remove the cache or clear the cache.
That makes sense.
But actually, you can just open up a dev console at any point and go like local storage.clear or whatever. And so, so most web apps like this maintain state, not by using cookies, because cookies have some drawbacks. I use local storage, which is a part of the storage API in JavaScript, and local storage stays in your browser even if you close the tab or the browser itself. Like it remembers that you went to a site and that site set some data, like how many games you've played and, all that kind of, all the things that when you go up to the little stats icon in the top right of Deckdle, all that stuff, all that is just running some functions on that local storage string. It's still a string, but it's a JSON stringified string. So it's a JSON config file that's been stringified because that's what local storage needs. And then when I load the game, I take that, I see if it exists. If it does, it the opposite of stringifying. It objectifies it. It turns it into a JSON object so that the app can read it and see, oh, you've already played the last 3 games and your highest combo was blah and da 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 da, all that kind of stuff. So, but if I do any kind of changes to the way that I store that string, then sometimes your local storage can get messed up and it might think that you only have 1 day that you did as opposed to the 2 that you actually did. And, I could go into the weeds, but in general, that's the idea.
So because you changed the format on that, that's why it periodically gets messed up. That's interesting because that's the same problem that we run into over and over again throughout computer science, right? Like, or software engineering, I guess, at least. Client server has that problem all the time, trying to keep the APIs. Anytime you have an API, really.
Yeah.
It's like keeping that consistent. It's like if you change it, and that's where, we could probably do a whole episode on semantic versioning if we really wanted to. Wouldn't be particularly interesting, but we could talk about it. But like that's where that kind of thing comes into play is, like you said, if this was a higher profile app, if more people used it, if you had more time to work on it, if if someone was paying you for it, right? Then that's where you would start to take those kind of things into account, because that's also how you deal with things like, okay, I changed the format of my model, and I don't want my users to lose their historical data, which they will if they wipe out their local storage.
Right.
So now, like, I need a thing that'll migrate the old version to the new version, and like it gets complicated fast.
It really does. And so having a non-high profile app like this is both, it's a double-edged sword. Like, obviously, I wish lots of people would be playing it, and I got lots of feedback as anything I put out there. But at the same time, I don't have a ton of people, and you all are very nice and okay with losing your history, because I keep saying, hey, you're testing it. Things could change. You might lose your progress. So I
and
can
we're all
break
pretty
things.
technical also, which also helps.
Yeah.
So, you're not trying to have like my mom clear her cache. She'd be like, what does that mean?
Right. Thankfully, everybody who's had an issue so far knows how to do that. But yeah, I mean, it is part of the move fast, break things, which is generally how I do personal projects that are low profile like this. Obviously, if I was doing a change like this for work, this would be way slower, way more methodical. I would do the things you're talking about, where I would make like a migration kind of commit, or put something in the code that checks for, oh, they have the old style of this, change it to the new style and don't tell them about it, and everything is smooth. But instead, it's easier to just say, just clear your cache, guys. and you'll get the new stuff. But yeah.
Well, I think that's very reasonable. And I think that's also why you are able to crank out like personal projects a lot faster than I am. I've been burned so much in my career by these kind of these kind of
Changes?
I can't even think of the right term. That technique of go fast and break things, right?
Yeah.
I've been burnt enough by things that I now have all of this baggage, and whenever I create a project, I'm like, okay, it needs this, it needs this, it needs this, and it needs that other thing. And then by the time I get there, I don't want to do anything anymore, because then it's become work. So you move fast and break things, and the way that you approach it allows you to do things so that it's, fun for you to work on.
Yeah, like
which then means it actually gets built.
Right, I get it out the door while it's still fun, and get other people to play with it so they can have some fun, and then fix the potentially game-breaking bug that we've talked about later. Because really, as long as you do it by 5, you're good.
Yeah, and we generally do them in the morning. It was more like we were all confused. How did you do this how'd you get a birdie on this? I got a +7.
Yeah.
There's no way. I'm like, oh, okay, that's how.
I mean, I gotta say, obviously it's the golf form of solitaire. Most people are probably more familiar with the Klondike one, where you have like the 7 columns, and you have like 1 and then 2 and then 3 and then 4, and you have to go from high to low, and you stack on the aces.
Which is
all the way
honestly
back up.
one of the worst solitaire games.
And yet that's the one everybody knows because it got installed on the first Windows.
I've known it before that. Like, that was what when you called something solitaire.
Yes.
That's what you meant when I was a kid.
Yes.
Nothing else.
And that's why, like, that wasn't why I didn't choose it, because I mean, I could make the Klondike version, but I had been playing a lot of the golf solitaire. I don't know. I learned it like 6 to 12 months ago at some point, and I'm like, this is it's faster, it has fewer rules, and it's perfect for a daily game, because I think the Klondike solitaire takes too long, and sometimes it takes too long to get to the point where you can't beat it. I mean, golf also can't be won every day, and by win I mean you actually remove all the cards from the tableau into the base, and then if you do that and you have any stock left over, that's how we decide that you got like a birdie or an eagle or a whatever. But you can get through a game of golf in like 30 seconds. Most Klondike solitaire games do not take 30 seconds. I mean, they're called patience for a reason. You're supposed to like kind of leisurely do them, but for a daily game, I think I chose well with golf. Of all the types.
I agree, and it also gives the scoring mechanism is built in there, and it means something like somewhat intuitively to people. It has a real world mapping.
Yes,
and so it's like, oh, cool. Like, that's where I talked about the birds earlier, like that.
Yeah,
when I got an albatross, I was like, that's a thing.
Yeah, I mean,
like, what does it mean when you get this?
Yeah, if you somehow get like -6, like under par, which is so rare that a hole would even be that long, and that you would somehow get it in like basically a hole in one, that's called a phoenix, because they probably just had to make, well, what's another bird? No one's going to get this, but let's make up another bird. Anyway.
Yeah, it's like birdie, eagle, albatross,
Condor, ostrich.
I think. Oh yeah, ostrich. That was the fun.
That's the
that
five.
that was the one.
You got that one time. Yeah, and I added those pictures because I'm like, okay, if you did that well, you need a cute AI generated picture of that bird to look at as a reward. Yeah. The only other thing I wanted to talk about Deckdle that most people probably don't even interact with it this way. I don't even. Is that it has sound. It does. There are sound effects to both clicking on cards, winning, losing, all that kind of stuff. And it's all done by this cool little tool called Web Audio Tiny Synth, which basically you can just say, like, play this note for this long at this volume. And then if you just string a bunch of, like, set timeouts in a row, then you get, like, an arpeggio, or you get, if you do them all at the same time, you get a chord. And I don't have to record any of that. I can just program it as, like, you click this thing or this event happens, and it does that. So I love that kind of stuff for something like this. It's perfect. Because otherwise, I have to have a bunch of MP3s that go along with it and take up, like, 10 times as much as the code itself does. This is much better.
Yeah, because for a daily game, you want it to load fast, and you want it to play fast.
Right. And I just have to add audio to stuff. That's just me. But it's turned off by default. Most people will never see it. Most people never go into the options. I don't understand those people, because whenever I start any new game project, I always look for the options, settings, menu to see what you can change. But that's just me. I don't know.
I do too, actually, but I think I probably turn off things.
And that's fine. That, the more that I've programmed in my life, and the more that I've been, exposed to, like, accessibility and diversity, like, it's important to, I like an app that has options for as many people to enjoy it as possible. So I'm going to write stuff that way, and I'm going to have options that have sane defaults, but also have some fun little cool stuff, like the combo meter and the animations of the cards. That's something that everybody seems to like, so it's on by default.
I enjoy the combo meter.
Yeah.
I like how when you fail the combo, it, like, falls off the top.
And I'd love to take credit for making those animations, but I cannot, because I didn't. It's this awesome tool called Animate CSS, and it has a bunch of little, like, pre-scripted CSS animations, and you just say, like, when something happens, make this one happen. So that's where that little hinge falling thing comes. But yeah, that's the whole app to me.
But you chose that.
I did. I chose it from a larger group of items.
Hey, it was an artistic choice.
It was.
I support it.
All right. So yeah, I'll fix that bug, but I'm glad you're enjoying it. I like it. I went, like, whole hog on it in the beginning when I was working on it, and now, like, I've kind of lost all drive to make it any better. Like, fixing bugs, yes, but, like, I don't know. Golf works so well, I don't even know if it's worth spending the time making the other styles, because I don't want to deal with saving the state of multiple types on multiple days for multiple people. My brain kind of doesn't like where that's going, so I don't know if I will or not. But we'll see. So that's Deckdle. Thank you for listening to our episode today. If you want to hear more discussions, you can go to hackingthegrepson.com, where we try to put out a new episode every other Wednesday. And until the next time we shuffle a deck of cards and deal you an amazing episode, we now return you to your regularly scheduled lives already in progress.